Welcome back to My Child Can't Read, a Heartland Crisis. I'm your host, Jessica Glover, and this is Season 3, From Resistance to Revolution. This season is about the people changing literacy from the ground up. Parents, teachers, advocates, and those of us who once trusted a system we thought we understood, until we learned the truth. Season 3 is about courage. The courage to question what we were taught, to confront what wasn't working, and to step into a movement rewriting the future of millions of children. And we begin here with the teacher's story, because everything that follows depends on understanding one thing. Our teachers were never given the training they needed to teach reading based on how the brain actually learns. Not in Kansas, not in most of the country. Parents weren't told that. Teachers weren't told why their programs were failing kids. And no one told families what that gap would cost. But now the truth is finally coming to light. And once you know better, you fight for better. This season, we're diving into the heart of that fight. Teacher voices, parent advocacy, misdiagnosis, and SPED blind spots. Rural organizing, systemic barriers, the realities and the hope of dyslexia. Because this revolution isn't just about exposing gaps. It's about teachers who are searching for real training, teachers who are trying to bridge theory to practice, teachers who want coaching and support, teachers who are learning the science of reading for the first time, and teachers who still haven't been given the chance, but deserve to be equipped to help every child read. Season 3 is the story of resistance becoming revolution, of parents finally being told the truth and learning how to advocate, of communities rising when the system says no, and of a movement refusing to look away. Season 3 starts right here. Let's begin. Imagine this. A bright, curious child enters school, eager to read. And by second grade, the reports start coming in. He's inattentive. She's defiant. Maybe ADHD? But the truth, their brain is wired for reading differently. They have dyslexia. And for decades in Kansas and across the country, this child and thousands like them have been misdiagnosed, mislabeled, or completely missed by the special education system. Today, we're uncovering how that happens, what it costs, and how parents and teachers fight back. Misdiagnosed, dyslexia and the SPED system's blind spots. How misdiagnosis happens. Let's start with the system itself. Special education eligibility is complicated. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, provides protections, but it doesn't require universal screening for dyslexia. It's up to districts, teachers, and parents to notice problems. Children get labeled ADHD or behavioral issues. Dyslexia wasn't officially recognized in Kansas until 2023. Screening and curriculum rubrics often miss advanced word study entirely.
My name is Joyce Temanson, and I teach kindergarten, and this is my 32nd year of teaching in school districts. I've taught 30 years in kindergarten and 2 years in first grade. Here's the thing is, 32 years ago, you knew kids had dyslexia, but what we were really taught was dyslexia was reversals and letters. We knew kids had learning disabilities, but dyslexia wasn't one that usually came to the forefront when you were looking at a student who was struggling. That wasn't something that automatically popped in my head as, oh, wow, they're dyslexic. I was like, oh, they're a student who they're struggling. Maybe they're going to have a learning disability. When you look at dyslexia now and everything that we know about it, now that I can instantly go, oh, I need to keep an eye on them because they definitely have traits of dyslexia. We didn't have that information 32 years ago. It wasn't taught to us as new teachers of, hey, these are the signs, this is what you need to look at. And definitely we weren't taught how to restructure our teaching to best meet their needs.
So at what point did you first encounter the science of reading or structured literacy methods?
Really, when I moved to Skyline, the school that I'm at now, they were teaching pathways to reading. And so that was a completely different way of teaching to what I was doing before. It was more phonics based. It was definitely the start of the science of reading that I had never been taught. I took the sound case training from the Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, and that was a huge eye-opener for me. Definitely brought in the science of reading. The sound case was a fantastic starting point for me. Just this is what's important. These are the stages that they're going to go through. I mean, you have to have this in place before this can be in place. And it was fantastic. And I had been teaching at that time 20 some years. And it was just like, okay, this is starting to make sense now. Now I get it. It all had a pattern. It all fell into place. It was like, this is why we teach the sounds. This is why we blend. And it just all started to come together, and it was eye-opening for me.
My name is Brooke Hammon, and I have been a teacher for 10 years. So I'm relatively new to the game. I have worked with mainly kindergarten and preschool.
Okay.
So my experience getting into education is non-traditional. So I started out just, as a mommy, and I worked for the Postal Service, and my office was reducing hours, and I came in to enroll my son, his kindergarten year, and they needed a teacher aide. So I interviewed the position, and when I started working, it was like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And so I was an aide for 2 years, and my district came to me and said, we'd really love to start a preschool program. Would you go back to school? And I said, yes. I did not do the traditional 4-year teaching program. I went through the TAP program. So I did the apprenticeship, which in my opinion is the way every school should go. I think that it's applicable. I think it's real world. If you're someone who was in my position, a mommy, and had already established life and you still had to pay bills, then, you can still get paid as you're teaching and as you're learning. So,
and just, Brooke, because I bet there's some listeners that might not know what the TAP program is, but from my understanding, you get to start teaching right away as like a para, right? With the master teacher.
You do. And then your time in the classroom counts toward your student teaching, essentially. It is amazing. And at the time, WSU was the only school in the state of Kansas who offered. Could have changed by now. I don't know. So when I went into the program, I knew the grade band I was going to teach. I was aware of, kind of the skills that would be needed. And so when we got into literacy courses, I think my mindset was a little different because I was able to kind of hone in on what I knew would be applicable for my classroom.
I was very encouraged to read a testimonial that you had shared from Aaron and Gabby Roach about their son. I saw my own daughter in that situation, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of parents for your investment in your own learning so that you could help other kids, because it's just so exciting when we find answers, because it's so frustrating pulling at all the things that you hope will work and then they don't work and you're at your wit's end. And thankfully we finally found the assessment center here through a friend who was teaching at the school. But I just think about the need for population in general, like 20% of our kids need extra repetition. And so they're going to need to have tutoring of some kind, whether it be in a specialized school or from a specialist like yourself. So it's really neat that you pursued that to help kids.
it was concreted when, the idea of, oh, I want to go train. The district then the following year said, we want you to go take the sound case training for your littles.
Yeah.
So the kindergarten teacher and we went. And I remember walking into Phillips and thinking, oh my goodness, this is just a whole world that I, as an educator, I don't know about. We need to know about this. We need to know about this. Every educator needs to know about this. But even then, every parent needs to know, because there's just such a mindset out there of something's wrong with my child. Something's wrong with my child when they can't read. And then when they, if they're given a diagnosis of dyslexia, or if they're told they're suspected dyslexia, then something's wrong with my child. And we need to know, as parents and as educators, no, there's nothing wrong with your child. They just process differently.
Yeah.
And it's the job of professionals to know what to do with a child who processes differently. And I've told several of my colleagues, and, I've had a conversation with leadership, that if we know that dyslexia or some sort of language processing is there, and we do nothing about it, it's malpractice. It is educational malpractice. It's ethically wrong. And, that'd be the same as a doctor knowing the treatment for an illness or a disease and then just not doing anything about it. And it's malpractice. And it's beyond vital that educators know about dyslexia and know about, auditory processing, language processing, all the things that affect reading and learning. It's vital.
Dr. Janelle Tidemann is a licensed psychologist who conducts comprehensive evaluations for learning differences like dyslexia and ADHD. She's worked with hundreds of students, and she's seen firsthand what happens when kids are misdiagnosed instead of properly identified. So I asked her, what happens when students are misdiagnosed?
For one, since dyslexia and ADHD are very comorbid, if we misdiagnose or miss one of those, then that can lead to them having years and years of very extreme difficulty in school, achieving standardized assessment goals, leading to feeling like a failure, low self-esteem, not learning to be able to read at a level where they can function as an adult. So these consequences will carry them throughout their lives, and children with ADHD and dyslexia both already have, generally speaking, lower self-esteems compared to other children. And so it just makes that much more difficult for them to come out of.
You explained the connection between low self-esteem and dyslexia diagnosis. Like there's something chemical, right?
There's something chemical in both, I think, of dyslexia and ADHD, because there's so many genes that interact with that. Okay. But low self-esteem, again, it also can be very situational. And so they are typically, they already feel like failures because they usually have very high intelligence, which we might have talked about, especially in certain areas. And so and then the frustrating part comes when they know they have this high intelligence, but they can't read basic words. And so that encourages them to be very frustrated and also go, well, then I must be dumb. Yeah. Or I must not be smart, or else I'm a failure. And so that's what resounds in their brain, and that's how they start to see themselves until someone points out to them that that is not the case. So until they are told, no, this is where you are intellectually, and this is where you are with processing weaknesses, and that's why you struggle so much, but it has nothing to do with your intelligence. But most kids compare themselves to other children, as we all did, right? And so when they see little Johnny over here flying through the reading lesson and they can't read the simple words, they already feel like a failure. And so it just gets more and more complex as the time goes on.
Yeah. And in your experience, do you find that having a professional diagnosis is much more sufficient to bring to an IEP meeting, or even to use in helping to hone in that child understanding the way they're really wired, as opposed to me just telling you, you're not stupid, you're actually really smart, but I have no backing to it?
Absolutely. So when I meet with these children and their parents, and I can show them and tell them that they are in the very high or extremely high, superior, very superior ranges in these areas intellectually, the smile on their face, the relief that they have for both parent and child, makes them very ecstatic. Because again, parents can say, you're very smart, but they don't have anything to back it up.
Yeah.
I'm showing them, I'm talking about the tests where they scored really high. I'm telling them the age level they're at, which is generally way higher than they are. In some cases, it's teen to adult levels for very young children. I mean, it's incredibly amazing. A kid I had on Monday, for example, fluid reasoning skills, complex problem solving skills. He's scoring in the 137 standard score, which is the 99th percentile. So gifted. And so the look on his face is like, wow, because I show a visual of the normal bell curve, and so they can see it.
Yeah.
And the parents too. And the parents know, right? They can verbalize that. But to hear it from a professional who's not your parent to a kid, I think goes a very long way.
As a parent, I knew something was off, but I didn't know what to look for. Does your young child mix up sounds like saying "orf head" instead of "forehead," or struggle with crayons, scissors, or using a fork? Confuse up and down or left and right? Have trouble focusing on spoken instructions? Walk or talk later than the other kids? Skip instead of run or struggle with rhythm? Forget the order of steps? Miss 3-part directions by age 3? Have trouble reciting songs or nursery rhymes? Struggle to remember the days of the week? Get frequent ear infections? Or write their name but can't identify the letters in it? If 6 or more of these sound familiar, your child might be at risk for dyslexia. I called Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, and it changed everything. They understood, they helped. You'll be glad you called. I know I was. Call 316-684-7323 or visit funlearn.org today.
When teachers don't have the training, kids get mislabeled. When parents don't know the signs, the system assumes everything is fine. And when the system resists naming dyslexia, children pay the price. The truth is, dyslexia hasn't suddenly become more common. We're just finally starting to identify it instead of mislabeling it as behavior, attention issues, or developmental delays. Jeanine Chicago Goodwill Sound Case Story. Jeanine Phillips tells a story that perfectly illustrates this systematic absurdity. A scientifically aligned reading program designed to teach the alphabetic principle correctly ends up in a thrift store, discarded. Meanwhile, kids across Kansas are being misdiagnosed. The problem, the answer, is literally sitting in a cardboard box while children are sent down the wrong path.
I want to tell you a story because it captures the absurdity of our system better than almost anything else I've ever experienced, witnessed, or seen. Years ago, I created a learning box, if you will, called the Sound Case. It's a structured, explicit reading program designed to teach the alphabetic principle as well as early language skills necessary to learn to read to young children. It was scientifically aligned, and it was fully funded through a wonderful philanthropic group. The grant didn't just cover training. It covered the materials for the entire Sound Case curriculum kit. It included materials for children and all the materials for the educator, including children's books, which means whoever received it had both the knowledge and the tools, or at least they were supposed to. One day, At the office, we received a phone call, and a woman quickly explained that she had found a sound case kit at a Goodwill. This was in Chicago. She called because she could tell it was wonderfully designed, and she was incredibly interested in it, even without knowing exactly what it was. And that's when I realized something deeper. Immediately, I thought to myself, what if the teacher or parent who originally received or purchased that sound case didn't know how to use it? Not because they didn't care, but because they themselves had never been taught how to read well. We train adults all the time who are struggling readers. So when we hand someone a solution, if they don't have the foundational knowledge, it can still be inaccessible.
Jen Barrett is a mom who knew something wasn't right because she'd lived it herself. She struggled in school with what she now understands was undiagnosed dyslexia. So when her daughter Emily began showing the same signs, Jen spoke up early, asked questions, and pushed for help. What she ran into instead was silence, delay, and blame. Here's Jen. So you're in your school district in Kansas, and
Yes.
You've got Emily there. You're recognizing, oh my goodness, she's got similar things that I dealt with. It's all coming back. What did you do as far as advocating for her at that point?
So immediately, actually, when I put her in, I immediately told them, I said, look, I said, we've been homeschooling. This is what we've done. This is, showed them the work. I said, you know, she is still struggling with letters after 3 years.
Yeah.
And I said, I think we need to get her tested for dyslexia. And they said, well, let's give it a little time in the classroom and let's see. Okay. I understand that because you need to see it for yourself. I can understand that. So after maybe a month, I reach out to her teacher and I'm like, hey, where are we at on this? Have you seen this? Oh, well, Emily behaves fine. I don't think there's anything wrong. That's not an answer to my question. My question was, are you seeing these things? And she said, well, I haven't tested her yet. When are you going to test her? Because I don't want her to get behind. If she needs intervention, I want her to get it now. Well, the teacher started just basically leaving me on red. And so then I went to the principal and I told the principal, I said, hey, this is where we are. I've talked to the teacher. She's not really responding to me now. I want to get Emily tested. This is what I see. And I don't think it's any better here. And she goes, well, it's at least 5 years out. And Emily's not a problem.
Wow.
And I said,
Okay.
well, that's great. But Emily needs to be tested for this. I said, I had severe learning disabilities. And I said, I know now it's dyslexia. And I said, I want to make sure that she does not fall behind. And the principal said, you are not educated and you have no idea what to really look for.
Wow.
And I said to her that I do know what to look for because it's run through our family. And I said, no, she needs to get tested. And I left her in a total of 4 months. And that Christmas break, I pulled her out because they were arguing with me. I never got to see a single test score, though they said they tested her and she tested fine. They wouldn't show me. I didn't even get to have a parent-teacher meeting.
Wow.
I tried
So no fall conference.
No fall conference. I didn't get one because I couldn't make it work on the teacher's schedule. And I was like, but I really want to talk to you about this. And the school was not willing to talk about it at all. And they kept going back to her behavior as, well, she behaves, so she's not a problem in class. So it's obvious she doesn't need help.
And there it is. The blame quietly shifts. Not instruction, not systems, not training, the problem becomes the parent or the child. In Season 2, former Board of Regents leader, as well as local business leader, John Rolfe warned us about this exact pattern. The blame game rooted in Kansas pride. When systems don't want to admit failure, responsibility gets shifted downward, onto teachers, onto parents, onto kids, instead of upward where instruction, training, and policy decisions live. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So in Season 3, we're bringing in your article from 2025. And your new article makes it clear that passing literacy legislation is not the same as implementing it. What do states consistently underestimate when they pass these laws?
They forget that it's not laws that solve the problems of the world, it's the people who enact the laws. And so they often don't think about the systems that support the work that has to be done, nor the knowledge it takes to carry that work out, and the time and the treasure, the resources of money and funding that it takes to really bring something to fruition. Then on the back end of that, I think that policymakers and other people in high levels really forget that you have to come up with a supportive context to support people, to bring people in, to get the buy-in that you need to do something. That means you have to be consistent. And all too often, it's just you pass the law and then the gaze shifts. But it's going to take years to really implement a law to full implementation and do it well. But the gaze has already moved. So people are left to wonder, is it really important? Were you really concerned about that in the first place when you're not consistent? Then you really have to also make sure that you're there to hold their hands and that you put the systems in place to walk them through the process to where that you can show them what has to happen. You can do that with them. You can let that do them for themselves, and they can go out there and do that with other people. And we don't have that supported scaffolding in place to really bring laws to action. I know this might sound really conceptual, but to break it all down, policymakers just forget that if you care about something, you don't just pass a law and walk away. You have to stay there until it's done. And the done is that in the case of literacy legislation, kids are able to read and write for themselves and go off and be gainfully employed and have lifelongs of learning and happiness.
That question, was this really important, is exactly where families and teachers get stuck. Not because they don't care, not because they don't try, but because they were handed expectations without support and systems without scaffolding. When reading instruction fails, it doesn't fail quietly. It shows up as confusion, mislabeling, and shame, as children and parents believing the problem is them. Even when laws are passed or training is required, the real work is in the classroom, where teachers are expected to take what they learn and make it work for students. But what happens when that follow-through is missing? Brooke Hammon has seen this firsthand. She's a teacher who completed state-mandated training in the science of reading, and she shares the challenge of ensuring it's actually applied where it matters most, the kids.
So I feel like letters, it's scientifically backed, it's it's proven. But I think at the time, I want to be sensitive in how I say it.
Yeah.
To me, the idea of saying you must take this training, but you don't have to apply this training is kind of a wash, because the state is requiring teachers to have the science of reading seal and to have this training. But is there checks and balances to make sure it's being applied in the classroom? No, there's not. And so does that negate the effectiveness, and does it negate the importance of what we're trying to do as a state? Am I making sense? Does that make sense? You're required to do it, but then you might not ever hear another thing about it. You might not ever have to prove that you are using it in the classroom. So do I think it's very important for teachers to have that? Yes. But do I think that it's being applied everywhere? No. No, I don't.
That gap, training without accountability, is exactly why kids continue to fall through the cracks. Teachers may have the knowledge, but without systems to support its consistent application, progress stalls. And when reading instruction stalls, families and children pay the price.
That sound case sitting in a Goodwill in Chicago is a metaphor. The solution existed, the funding existed, the research existed, but the knowledge never fully reached the people who needed it, the adults or the child. And until we fix that, the box keeps moving and the kids keep paying the price.
Odegaard's Literacy Legislation Insights. Legislation helps, but it isn't a magic fix. As Timothy Odegaard writes in his 2025 article, Literacy Legislation in Practice, woven throughout our Season 3 episodes, see the notes for a reference in the link. Legislation is only the beginning. Screeners are required, but implementation is uneven. Under-identification of dyslexia is the largest failing point. Dyslexia is overrepresented in behavior referrals. Curriculum rubrics often ignore advanced word study. Kansas is no exception. Even with laws in the books, systemic blind spots remain. Parent advocacy is what turns legal protections on paper into real support in the classroom. If you want more specifics on how to advocate effectively, you can go back and listen to Season 3, Episode 2, Parent Advocacy 101, and be sure to check the show notes for all the resources we mentioned there. Because without advocacy, children risk being overlooked and the consequences are profound. What misdiagnosis costs a child? The consequences? Profound. Children lose confidence. They may feel stupid or lazy. Their love of learning is eroded. Here's Jen Barrett again, sharing the all too common experience of parents navigating misdiagnosis and delayed support.
And so we did that. We went ahead and came here, and so she actually hit the category of severely dyslexic.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, a devastating feeling. And honestly, I mourned. Mm-hmm. I mourned for probably 3 months because I was like, crap, how do I help her?
Yeah.
Because I know where I was.
Yeah. When you'd already spent 3 years trying to do alphabet and numbers.
And I wasn't getting anywhere.
And the school district wasn't supportive.
Yeah. And I looked at another school district and visited with them, and I didn't even bother putting her in there because they were giving me the same thing.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, if that's what I'm going to get from public schools, then we have no choice but to homeschool. Mm-hmm. So I went to the homeschool group that we were a part of, and I talked to every parent there, and they were like, oh, use this curriculum. Oh, use that curriculum. It's nothing wrong with the curriculums, but it wasn't helping. Mm-hmm. I spent probably $5,000 on curriculums trying to find a curriculum that would help her, and nothing helped. I was at my wit's end.
And sometimes the cost of misdiagnosis isn't just a few hard years in school, it's decades. Dr. Janelle Tidemann sees what happens when dyslexia goes unrecognized for a lifetime.
I had a 54-year-old woman come to me about a year ago wanting to be evaluated for dyslexia. She told me that she had always struggled in school with reading and spelling comprehension, and she knew that something was terribly wrong. However, 45 years ago, she was overlooked due to lack of awareness, oversight, or a combination. When I was reviewing results and pointing her strengths, very bright, high visual, spatial, and complex problem solving, and her weaknesses, fluency, spelling, language simple processing, she began to break down. She told me that she was so relieved to find out what she knew was a problem for her. She was so relieved to find out that she was not dumb and not a failure. She said, I wish I would have known this information years ago. It would have saved me a lot of heartache.
Next, you'll hear from parent Sarah Collins. She describes the moment she realized how deeply this struggle had already reached her young son, not just academically, but emotionally. What she shares is a reminder that reading failure doesn't just affect children in the classroom. It follows them home, into their sense of self-worth, and into the hearts of their families.
I was like, you earned this,
Sweet.
but yet you did this for me. Like, that's how brokenhearted he was, because he felt like he was letting me down. He felt like he was letting his teachers down. So, here we are with a 6-year-old, when you say, when did you first realize it? He was still a baby pretty much. And just feeling so defeated and so frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, it was heartbreaking for our whole family.
So if you could go back and tell yourself something to encourage yourself back in that time, what would you tell yourself?
I would absolutely tell myself that you have not failed him. The system has failed him. And his teacher actually didn't fail him. The system failed her. She didn't know better. She didn't know how he processed language, how he processed instructions.
Sarah's words matter because they name something parents carry quietly for years, the fear that somehow they failed their child. But what her story shows us is this: when children struggle to read and no one names why, everyone internalizes the blame. The child, the parent, and often the teacher too. And yet again, what we hear in these stories is that the problem was never a lack of effort or love. It was a lack of information, training, and systems that knew how to respond. When dyslexia is finally identified, when children receive structured, evidence-based literacy instruction aligned with how their brains learn to read, everything changes. Confidence begins to return, shame loosens its grip, and families finally get answers. If you're a parent listening and thinking, I should have known sooner, or a teacher wondering, why wasn't I taught this? Please hear this clearly. You are not alone, and you are not to blame. If you're wondering what to do next, please see the show notes. We've linked trusted advocacy resources, including a downloadable parent advocacy guide that explains your child's rights and how literacy decisions are made in Kansas, and a Kansas parent script you can use when requesting an evaluation and structured reading support in writing. You don't have to figure this out on your own, and you don't have to find the right words alone. And if you'd like a deeper dive into parent advocacy, how families turn legal rights into real-world support, we explore that in Season 3, Episode 2, Parent Advocacy 101, with additional tools and links in the show notes, as said before. Because naming the problem is the first step, and once it's named, there is a path forward. Before we close today, I want to speak directly to you. To parents, you are the expert on your child. If something feels off, trust that feeling. Document concerns, request screenings in writing, and keep asking for clarity. You are not the problem, and you are not alone. To teachers, you didn't cause this crisis, but you can be part of the solution. Seek training, ask your district for support, and continue to advocate for evidence-based instruction. Your willingness to learn and adapt changes lives, sometimes in ways you'll never fully see. To advocates, you are the bridge between policy and practice. Your persistence in meetings, the emails, the stories you share is how change begins. You are not alone either, and your voice may be the one that unlocks a door for a child who has been waiting far too long. What you've heard in this episode is not a story about a lack of effort. It's a story about what happens when a system doesn't have the language to name what a child is experiencing. When dyslexia goes unidentified, children absorb the confusion. Parents absorb the blame. Teachers carry frustration without answers. And for roughly 20% of students, those who need intensive, structured, multisensory literacy support, missing that identification can mean falling further behind while others move forward. There are the students who need a clear dyslexia tier of instruction to ensure they get the interventions their brains require. For years in Kansas and across the country, dyslexia existed in a strange in-between space, known by families, whispered by educators, and rarely named by systems. That silence mattered, because what isn't named can't be addressed. In the next episode, we'll tell the story of what changed and how just over 2 years ago, Kansas finally acknowledged dyslexia in state law. You'll hear how persistent advocacy, strategic pressure, and unexpectedly, an ally few people saw coming helped make this recognition a reality. because naming the problem is the first step. And once it's named, the work can finally begin. Thanks for listening to My Child Can't Read, a Heartland Crisis. If today's episode resonated with you, if you saw yourself, your child, or your classroom in these stories, you're not alone. We believe every child can learn to read, and every parent and teacher deserves the knowledge to help them. I invite you to take action today by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode, rate and review to help others find this series, and tell us about your story and discover how the Phillips Fundamental Learning Center is changing lives through literacy at funlearn.org/podcast. That's funlearn.org/podcast. And share this show with a friend, teacher, or fellow parent who needs to hear it. All resources, source credits, and tools mentioned in this episode can be found in the show notes. Remember, together we can rewrite the story, one reader at a time, right here in the Heartland.